I was living with my mom, and she was battling with domestic violence, where she was fighting with her boyfriend every day. And eventually that thing came to an area where they argued one time, and he had hit her in the head, like with a pipe or whatever it was. And she was bleeding, and they were fighting, and she ended up killing him.
Nicholas DuBose was raised in the projects of Detroit during the infamous crack era. His father did his best to raise him despite his drug addiction, while his mother lived her life with an abusive boyfriend, who she would kill in self-defense, with Nicholas as the witness. It is no surprise that Nick found himself selling drugs and catching his first felony at 13 years old. After his last charge and the birth of his first kid, he knew he had to change his ways. The impact of the felonies was stifling his opportunities. But by the grace of God, he had his felonies expunged and began his own trucking business in 2021, the Freight Company. We hope today's interview will inspire you to know you can do the same. Without further ado, let's learn how Nick went from the streets to finding freedom over the road. All right, well, welcome again to Prodigal's Build, and I am so delighted to have with me Nick DuBose with me, and he's a great guy that I have been collaborating with on a project, and I must say we kind of have kindred spirits. We're both very left brain, right brain at the same time, just busy on the go, doing our thing, and I just feel like really honored to know you, Nick, and thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your story.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. The pleasure is mine. Like, trust me, like it's all good.
Good. So I've already given a brief introduction of you, but if you want to just go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone.
I'm Nicholas DuBose. People call me Nick. I'm from Detroit, kind of on both sides, east side and west side. And yeah, I own a trucking company. Yeah, I run a trucking company, the Freight Company. And so,
okay.
So my childhood was in that era that they always kind of talk about as far as where the city was, like the Coleman Young era and that kind of thing. So, I had a huge family. Like, my grandma had 15 kids. And so, between my mom and my dad, they're both deceased now, but between both of them, they both had drug problems. And so it was kind of like, whoever I was living with at the time, because I kind of went back and forth, you had kind of like the same set of problems. And it kind of affected me in school, but I was still a bright kid. By the time I got to high school, I was already kind of like in the streets a little bit. So.
Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about that. What exactly do you mean by you had one foot in the street?
Well, especially in that era that I came up in, it was so many drugs out, like just as far as crack and heroin, and the dynamic was just much different than it is now. Like, it was like crack was everywhere. Like, and I stayed in the projects on the west side. I stayed in the Herman Gardens. It was just, big housing project and drugs at every corner, basically. So at a point or another, it will grab you, especially for a kid like me that was kind of, my dad had, at the time I was living with my dad, and he had his own, troubles with drugs that he was dealing with. And I understand that thing a lot better now as an adult than I did when I was a kid. Even if you got the best intention, you still got this kind of monkey on your back, so I don't really blame my parents for having that on them, if you will. But nevertheless, it kind of just made it easy for me to kind of transition from being a good kid to the streets, because, I could see stuff. I wanted like Harachis and Adidas Torsions and the Lottos, and I wanted to be fly, like I wanted to make money too, and I can come out of my house and see the big homies around me. They was, they had all the nice stuff, so it made it easy for you to kind of transition over.
Unfortunately, in some of those neighborhoods, that is the pinnacle of success, is getting that kind of bag. And sometimes you don't see any other options, or you don't see like, okay, here's a portfolio of options for you.
Right, right.
Like, here's the only one on the portfolio sometimes. I mean, at least in your mind, unless someone else comes alongside you and shows you something different.
I'm 10, 11 years old. And that's what I'm saying. Like, the culture is a lot different now, because a lot of the 10, 11-year-olds that I see now wouldn't be built for like some hardcore street stuff. But back then it was so common, like that a 10, 11, 12-year-old could actually be in the game and doing something. And that's just weird. I think one of the things that kind of sent me over from good kid to drug dealer was trauma. I had an area where I was living with my mom, and she was battling with domestic violence, where she was fighting with her boyfriend every day. And eventually that thing came to an area where they argued one time, and he had hit her in the head, like with a pipe or whatever it was. And she was bleeding, and they were fighting, and she ended up killing him. And I kind of seen the whole thing, and it kind of put me in a space where it was just like wow, like I'm seeing it, and I understand what it is, but I just don't know how the gravity of it, almost, because I'm still young. I'm like 10 and a half, 11. And the way the guy passed, he went off of a balcony too. And so he fell flat, and I'm seeing all of this. So by the time I get to the police station, and then they placed me at my aunt's house, then that trauma started to rear its ugly head like a few months later, because I started to cut up in school. I was fighting every day. And I don't know if my auntie knew at the time. Like, she did the best she can. I love my auntie. But I don't think she knew, like, oh, this is a trauma response. You know what I'm saying? To what he just witnessed and what he just been through a few months ago. But she was like, all right, you too much. I'm going to take you over your dad's house. And then I get to the projects. And when I get to the projects, it was just like, like I just dove into the streets.
Yeah, the timing of all of that. Wow, at such a young age. You should have been in therapy. I mean,
I now know that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
But, it was just one of those things where you just kind of, during the time that it was happening, I was just living it. It never occurred to me that anything could be wrong, or I was having any kind of trauma response to anything. But as an adult now, I'm hearing, I got introduced to, I think, what you call eCourse. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar, but it's like if you have these factors here, then you're more likely to have these factors over here, and these factors over here are all bad factors, right? And so I just learned about those a few years ago, and when I learned about them and they were saying this stuff, they was like, hey, have you ever wondered where a meal was going to come from, or have you ever had a utility shut off, and all of the stuff that they were naming. I was checking all of those boxes on this side, and I was just like, wow, I didn't realize that my childhood was that, that kind of thing. And so the idea that I'm here now is like, that's nothing but God,
When you look at Black Americans now, we are definitely more on the side of getting therapy. If you think about the early 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s even, you couldn't get anybody to go see a shrink. It just wasn't looked upon the way that it is now. Now it's just like part of your healthcare. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that our parents did the best that they could, is all I'm trying to say.
I'm happy about that. And I tell you, you're absolutely right about that, because I'm really, I think the stigmatism is kind of removing itself, and it's not such a taboo thing when you're talking about in the area of mental health and trauma and those types of things. even now in this podcast and this conversation, if you'd have caught me 10 years ago, this isn't something that I would share. But I understand that the listeners that will hear this, there's somebody out there, and I want them to know that I am them. They are me, the one and the same. We're the same person. And I can do it, you can do it, you know, that kind of thing. And so I understand that that piece is important for somebody to be able to see it and identify it and be like, oh, wow, he went through some of the same things that I went through.
You know, you went to your father's house. This is after you've actually witnessed a murder. Then you ended up with your aunt, and some of the trauma started to play out in your behavior because you really don't really know what's going on or what to do with some of the things that you're feeling. And then you end up at your dad's house, and your dad's living in a project where in Detroit, and there's probably a lot of things going on, and in your state of mind, you probably get attracted to the wrong voices, the wrong influences, which makes total sense.
It kind of started with me being like a almost like a lookout boy, if you will, where like the big homies, they'll be out, you know, doing their thing, selling drugs, doing hand in hand stuff. And if I see the police, I'll see the police and I'll school, you know, so they'll know, all right, the police is here. They can run it. They can do whatever they do. And
so wait.
Yeah.
Is that the sound effect that you had to make?
Oh yeah. School. Hey, you heard it?
Yes, I did, because it just rolled out. It rolled out like muscle memory. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And so, in turn, what they would do is they would like send me to the store and, you know, bring me back this Fago Red Pop and some Better Made barbecues and keep the change. And they'd be to send me to the store with $10. And, you know, back then that was a pretty good take for going to the store, right? But in seeing what was going on and knowing what was going on, and then knowing that one of my classmates, may he rest in peace, man, his name was Tony. We used to call him Baby Tony. He was already selling drugs, and he used to come to school fresh, man, like super fresh, like you know, with all of the latest, you know what I'm saying, that kind of thing. And so we used to walk to school together and talk about it, you know what I'm saying, talk about selling drugs. And it was one time that all of the homies, they left. I forgot where they was going. They might have went to a picnic or something. And I was seeing the customers come, you know, looking for somebody to serve them. And I kind of just looked around and I knew where all of the stuff was. So I just ran and got it and did it. And when one of the guys got back, I'm trying not to name names, right? Okay. But when one of the guys got back, you know, I told him, I was like, hey, some people came and I took care of it. And he was like, well, what'd you get for them? And I was like, $5 a piece. And he was like, how many of them was it? And I was like, 8. And he was like, well, how much you got? And I was like, $40. He was like, go and keep it. But then that started it. Because then it was like, all right, $40, $50 for me at that age, you know, 11, 12 years old. That was like, whoa, like, all right, cool. Like, this about to be big. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm gonna be going to get me some Hirachis like tomorrow. Right? Like, and so that's kind of where that started. But then, you know, not that far into it, a year and a half go by, and I caught my first drug case, and it was as a juvenile. Yeah.
So was your dad there when you caught the case and
No, I was actually I was in my mom's care when that happened.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Mom did something real slick where when I moved with her, I was in the 9th grade at that time. And when I moved with her, she kind of treated me as an adult, and she referred to me as an adult, but I was still a kid. And so I was early in high school, 9th grade, maybe going to the 10th grade, possibly, but still a kid. You know, I'm still 14, I think, or something like that. But back then I was smoking weed with my mom. Like, you know, like she really kind of and I think she did that really because it allowed her to put me in an adult space so she could go out and continue to do adult things as far as her addiction. Then it didn't feel like she was leaving her kid at home. It was like, oh, Nick's an adult. He can hold his own.
At 14. Okay.
At 14. Never enrolled me in school when I got over there or nothing. Just, you know,
Wow.
14, it's like you hear, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Wow. So you just doing your own thing throughout the whole day, pretty much.
yeah, pretty much. I'm just, you know, looking for the stuff to get into. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
but it's weird that I was able to avoid. I've never been to prison at all. Like, I've been able to avoid prison at all costs. Even when I'm catching cases, I'm still catching cases and getting probation. Yeah, so I was able to kind of slide by the whole time. And not only the drugs, but anything else I was doing, I slid by a lot of stuff.
So when you say slide by, does that mean
Mhm.
you had a good attorney? Who was helping you
No,
out?
that mean I managed to not get caught selling drugs. Right. Like, I was like, there was a
Okay.
couple of times that you know, I got away from drug raids, and there was one time that I jumped off like a top porch and just took off. And so, you know, I just managed to avoid being locked up for drugs again for a long time. For and in this world, like, a long time is, you know, 3 or 4 years, 5 years. That's like a eternity for a drug dealer.
Mm.
Even when I went to jail, like, I understood that there were certain things that needed to happen, that would ultimately benefit. Like, I had Wanda Evans. She's a popular judge in the city. I remember going in front of her, and she said to me, on my first dope case as an adult, she said, "You do good to be working by the time you get back here." And I was just like, "Oh, okay, cool." So I went and got a job. And by the time I got back, I was like, "Hey, I got a job." She was like, "Oh, so you listen," you know, because she was one of those few judges that would kind of go over her notes before she talked to you, and you know, because she's gonna bring up everything she talked to you about from 3 or 4 months ago. Um, and she gave me probation for that first case, but um, I did the probation and I completed the probation, and I swear the ink didn't dry on me completing the probation before I caught another dope case. I remember going to report to my probation officer, and he didn't let me in the back. As soon as he opened the door, he just gave me the paperwork. And I was ready to tell him, because, you know, when you go see a probation officer, they'll tell you, "Hey, have you had any police contact?" I'm walking into the probation officer thinking like, "Oh man, I got to tell him that I had police contact, that I was involved in a drug raid." And he stopped me at the door and gave me the paperwork. When I look at the date on the paperwork, I legit got offered probation on one day and caught another dope case on the next day. Like, it was crazy.
That's terrible. That is
Yeah,
terrible.
like, it was crazy. And then this time it was this time changed things though. For this is where it kind of changed for me at, because when I caught that second dope case, my daughter, I was in jail, and my first daughter, she was 8 days old.
Mm.
And I'm in jail thinking that I got a probation hold on me. Like, oh man, like, they about to take this case and put it with this case and send me to jail for a long time. And all I can think of was like, wow, like, what am I going to tell my daughter when she turns 15 about where I've been?
Right.
You know, so that for me was like, kind of like, all right, like, you gotta get it together, basically. You know, and that's it. That was the turning point. My oldest daughter, her birth was kind of like the turning point where I was just like, all right, I got to go legit.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
absolutely is true. I mean, sometimes we'll be thinking, oh, kids are a burden. I think God sends us children like, okay, let me get this person together, so they can
Yeah.
stop thinking about themselves and kind of start thinking
Hmm.
about living for someone else who's going to be relying on you.
Hmm. You know, that's, when I'm thinking about these different things, like walking into the thinking I was going to have a probation, and all of a sudden I wasn't on probation anymore. I didn't even know that they were letting me off of probation. And again, that was nothing but God. Like, it was just like, yo, like, that came together perfectly. And with the second case, the second dope case, I started working, but then here's where the smart part came, is that by the time I get in front of this judge, because the last judge asked me to be working, I not only went and got a job, but this time I went and paid off my school. I owed a bill to Wayne County Community College. I went and paid that off, right, and enrolled for school, because now I'm about to go in front of this judge, and I'm like, hey, nah, like I got a job and I go to school, that kind of thing. So, and your age kind of play into that too, because I'm young. So the judge kind of looked and was like, oh, this kid made a mistake. I'm gonna give him probation. And so it's a lot of people that I'm not trying to teach anybody to get over on the system, but it's a lot of people that would just go in front of a judge just any old kind of way and that kind of thing, and wind up getting sent off. The judge look at me and be like, oh no, like this guy got potential. I'm gonna give him probation to give him another shot.
Yeah, that's definitely the way that you want to go before the judge. Like, oh, I'm a changed person. Look at what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah. And so I was blessed enough to have my brother, who's deceased now too, rest in peace. And I had gone legit, and he understood why I needed to. And so he would kind of pacify me so I wouldn't go back, that kind of thing. Like, as far as material stuff, he would make sure that I was straight. We was about the same size anyway, so I used to wear a lot of his gear. But I might pull up and have one of his cars for a couple of weeks or whatever. Because at the time I was working at Long John Silver's. Like, it's not like I was making a lot. I had took like in terms of pay, it was, compared to keeping in the idea that, when I'm selling drugs, I had like 2 or 3 dope houses on the east side. So I was doing pretty good, like in selling drugs. But walking away from that was tough because the money wasn't. I can remember staying in a rental car for a year straight, just because I had the money to do it.
So wait a minute, So you had 2 or 3 crack houses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm hearing this kind of thing, and I'm like so far removed. So if you had to give an equivalent of that on the other side, is that like having 3 McDonald's restaurants? Is that like having, 3 7-Elevens? Like, let's equivalent that to the legal hustle and the illegal hustle. Like, let me get some balance.
It was just really, really good money, man. Like, I was never broke at all. Like, really, like, it's kind of hard to put it because it's not something that I was ever able to like kind of count and be like, oh, I got this, that kind of thing. Other people did, like other, like when you think about the BMFs and the Big Meaches and these different historical drug dealers, right? They were able to like take and amass this whole thing of money and say, hey, I got this much. Whereas we was just running through, and like we would run through. And if I had to guess it, I would say that, put it like this, on a good month, I can probably stack 10, 12,000, 13,000, 14, something. Okay. And that's just saving it. If I was saving it, like saving all of my money, I could probably stack about 10, 15 grand in 30 days.
And that's tax free.
Yeah.
That's all yours. So
it's 15,000, like, and it's doable. It's very, very doable. It was doable. I don't know what they're doing now, so don't get me like.
Oh, I know. This is back in whatever year too. So,
but November the 1st to November the 30th, I could do 15,000 easy.
All right. So you went from that to Long John Silver's.
Yeah, to doing 400 a week or something like that. Like, if that, right?
I know you're like, where's the rest?
Yeah. But my brother did a good job with kind of pacifying me with the things that I would normally like. There was one time we went to the mall and we were getting ready to do a video shoot because we were still, rapping the whole time. Oh, and we did a song called Mink Coat. It was on the radio and everything. And he was like, man, we should just go get mink coats just because we got the song or whatever. And we went to the mall and he just bought me a mink. He kept me on the straight and narrow, definitely. I love my brother so much, man. Like, rest in peace again.
Yeah.
So when I leave Long John Silver's, I'm trying to like find a different job, and I'm trying to find a better job. I'm like, oh, and people were just turning me down over and over. And I just couldn't figure it out. Like, and it was because I had these felonies on my record, and I wouldn't lie about it. Like I would always, because I figured they could, they would know anyway. So leaving Long John Silver's, I was faced with that part of it. This was the first time that I had got a taste of what that actually looks like. And that was tough. That was tough because it almost shaped who I am now. But it was tough because there was places that I got turned down at that anybody could go to. I mean, anybody. And, I finally found a job that was paying me. I did stay there for like 10. I stayed there for like 10 years though. When I first got there, I got promoted within the first, I wanted to say 5 or 6 months of me being there. I got promoted to what you call a training manager. And then I stayed at that same position for like the next 9.5 years. Now I don't know who I rubbed the wrong way in that 9.5 years, right? But no matter what I did to get promoted to the next level, which was supervisor, they would just never promote me for whatever reason. And so at a point or another, I was just like, oh, okay, all right, I got to go on about my life, because I was doing about 50 grand a year though there. Nice. So it was definitely a job that was better than all of the fast food ventures that I had done before. But then that had its limits too. I gave them 10 years of my life, so, and that's kind of what that felony thing looked like for me. It kind of caused me to be in an area where you'll be kind of unnecessarily loyal to a place because there's a lack of hope outside of it. And so that's how they got 10 years out of me, is because no matter how bad it looked, it was just like, yeah, but I'm gonna do this because I know Ford ain't gonna hire me, or I know Chrysler ain't gonna hire me, or I know not even UPS will hire me, that kind of thing, because I got these felonies on my record. So
tell me about, how did you maneuver after that? Because I know you just feel kind of stifled. You feel like you don't have any other options. And then what happened?
When I there was a combination of things going on in my head. Number one was I didn't want to go work for anybody, because I just felt like they wouldn't know my worth. And then even if they knew my worth, I didn't believe I could get that job. When you put those two things together, you know what you get? Entrepreneurship. That's what I wind up in, because then I didn't have to worry about somebody understanding my worth, and my pay was determined by how hard I hustled. And when I put those two things together, then and I tried several things before getting to trucking. I did camera business, which was interesting because I did that ahead of the Ring camera. If I had stuck with that, I probably could have got in on that wave, really. I did I did a lot of stuff. I did landscaping, which I actually liked doing. And I did several things like that. I just like ran like a solid business. And I even owned a taxi cab. Like I was a taxi cab driver for a while. So,
okay.
And I was my own owner operator with that too. So, by the time I got to truck driving, it wasn't my first time at the rodeo. I was well versed in starting a business and getting it to an area where it was up and running legit and rolling, that kind of thing.
All right. So let me go back. So obviously this is something that you can do with a criminal background.
Yes. 100%.
So were there any obstacles at all for you with that background?
No, I can't say that there was. There was nothing. I was more concerned about other stuff, like being insurable. sometimes that's an issue. If you got if you didn't have a license and you just got your license back, you're probably not going to be able to get commercial insurance.
Oh.
It sounds weird, but that's just the way it is. Like if you just paid off your tickets and you just got your license, you got to sit on that license for like a year, right?
A year?
Yeah, it's like something like that.
Okay.
I ran into that with my taxi cab.
Oh.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. All right. So what about commercial insurance? I mean, to me, it sounds expensive.
It is.
Is it? It is.
Yeah.
All right. How many vehicles do you have?
I got one straight truck, and it's right around $1,300 a month now. You make the money though.
Okay, you make the money. Okay. All right.
Yeah, you make the money.
All right.
And then I'm gonna jump to a different level right quick, but it kind of pulls on what I was saying earlier. When I was doing that mock run, I already understood what my daily cost was based on the quote that they gave me over the phone. Mm-hmm. So the price of the insurance never really mattered to me because it's kind of baked into my cost already.
You know what? I think you have to get out of that thinking of looking at those expenses, because expenses are expenses. Mm-hmm. As long as you're making money, and like you said, it's baked into it, it doesn't matter. It'd be like marketing could cost you $20,000 a month, but if you're making $1 million, it really doesn't matter.
Right.
You factor that in.
Same thing. I used to have these conversations with people just randomly. They'll be like when the gas went up to $5.50, they was like, yeah, man, it costs so much to run that truck, don't it? And I'm like, no, not really. Because when the gas price go up, I get pinched a little bit, but when the gas price go up, my price go up. That's a formula. Like I got a spreadsheet for this. I look into my spreadsheet and there's a little spot with a number, right? And it says fuel price, right? And when it's $5.50 a gallon, then I go up there and I tap $5.50. And when it's $5.75 a gallon, I go up there and put $5.75, and my whole spreadsheet changed as a result of that number.
All right.
So it's not like I pay the extra 25 cents. That goes over to whoever's booking me. Like I don't pay that much. Now the problem is that when your price gets a little bit too high, you may lose a load or two in negotiating it, that kind of thing. But that rarely ever happens. So I'll be honest with you.
I would just think that's going to impact whoever you're working for more so than you, because they understand you got to get from point A to B, and if they want that load delivered, they gonna pay.
Yeah, far more than me. I mean, they're affected by it far more than I am. And then in terms of how many loads are available, that's where the impact is, but not load per load. And my wheels didn't stop turning during that time.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. So you found the vehicle 5 months later.
Yeah.
Now, meantime, though, I know that there's about 1 billion steps to this process.
You have a lot of different little boxes to check on the way. And some of them are relatively easy. Most of them are easy. They're just steps. Your authority is only hard because that's where you're going to spend your money at. Or satisfying. I'll tell you what, the authority was hard because that's where I spent the money at. That's where everything kind of came together at. But the other thing that was hard was the requirements for Amazon was not hard, but it was just a lot,
Okay. And you're able to do that with your criminal background, work for Amazon?
Yeah. No problem at all.
Well, now wait, let me back up. There are stipulations for certain felonies in trucking. There's certain time frames, with some companies where you can't actually work for them until your felony is so far back. So is Amazon one of those or no?
No. You could get on with Amazon without no worries at all with them. So what you're talking about is so there's two different kind of avenues that you can go in trucking. You can go in it as a owner operator, or you could go in it as, I want to be a truck driver and go drive for a different company. If you're driving for a different company, then you're kind of at the mercy of that company and whatever their process is. Luckily for truckers, there are a lot of felony friendly truck driving companies that'll just, hire you whether you got a felony or not. But in terms of, some companies, it's kind of a dice roll. Like certain companies, they may not touch a person that has the felony at all. Okay. But you're at the whim of whatever company it is. Me, I kind of went in as an owner operator, so I didn't have to deal with a company at all. Like I was like literally booking my own loads. I'm talking to the different brokers myself and negotiating my own rates and that kind of thing. With the hazmat, you have to get cleared through the TSA, and they do have a requirement for felonies. But I think it may be a time thing. Like if you have a felony and it's past this amount of time, then you can get cleared for a hazmat. Oh.
Good. Just because a lot of our members that are watching, or family members that have loved ones who have criminal backgrounds, I mean, I'm always trying to introduce options that are really appealing, that are lucrative, that don't have the typical obstacles in the way of, well, let me see if we can hire you or not. I mean, we want our people to be entrepreneurs. We want them to be financially free. We want them to have multiple streams of income. That is like the goal. So this to me is something that is so doable if it's for you. And which is beautiful, because I'm working with Nick right now on putting a course together on how to go into the trucking business. And one of the things that he's added that he felt was so valuable to him and could be valuable to you is to have an assessment. So you can look and see if this is really something that you want to do, because it's not hard to get into, but it also has to be something that you're really motivated to do. So
that's absolutely correct. Can I tell a quick story?
Yes, please.
So I was on the phone with a person a few weeks ago, and I was checking to see, where they were at with hiring people. And the guy that I was talking to, he said to me, he was like, hey, we need a year experience. And I'm just like, oh, okay, but wow, like, didn't y'all used to hire right out of school? And he said, yeah, we did, but people would come out of school, do truck driving for 5 or 6 weeks and quit. And I'm just like, wow, like somebody would like pay for school. And this is what I said to the guy. I said, somebody would pay for school, get out of school, find a good job, work it for 4 or 5 weeks and quit. He said, bingo. And I was just like, wow, like it kind of blew my mind when he said it. It made no sense to me. And so he was like, I really need, 6 months, 6 months at least experience. I really want a year though, low key. He was like, you send me somebody, maybe we can, but I want to see 6 months, a year, because I just got to know that you're built for trucking. And that's the part that kind of set on me, like after the conversation was over. Hang up the phone, and I'm thinking about that for a minute, because when you look at an experience requirement, you think of it in terms of the company wants to know that they can get you up to speed with minimal training, without having to have like the job, and they just got to kind of decorate around it. Well, that wasn't what he was actually saying. I don't think he cared about the training part of it. He wanted to know that you were built for trucking, right? Which is kind of different a little bit. And the way you find that out is through a self-assessment. You do a self-assessment. You look at the pros and cons. You do some like real world things to figure that out. I can't stress enough the importance of just doing a self-assessment and asking yourself like real questions in relation to what it is that you're trying to do. I didn't say this earlier, but it's the reason why I got out of the camera business, because I didn't self-assess that. I just seen it and thought that it would be a good business. And then here it is. I launched it and rode it, and then figured out that I didn't like it on the back end, which I still made the money, but I didn't like what I was doing. So it wasn't exactly a waste, but here I am as a truck driver, not a cameraman, right? So the self-assessment piece is really, really huge. And I think, and this is what I would do in that arena. There's a lot of stuff that you can do just with online in Google. Like, even if you're looking for the pros and cons, you can just put pros and cons of truck driving, pull up the first 3 or 4 pages and just go through and read those things, right? Mm-hmm. Because it'll give you a general feel of what people think the actual pros are and the actual cons are. The self-assessment piece is huge, but here's an extra one. This is a good one, right? If you Google something like this, I haven't did this, but I'm sure it'll work. Why I quit truck driving, right? If you Google something around that, play with it, try to figure out something, an exact verbiage for it. But why I quit truck driving, or how I found out truck driving ain't for me, or whatever. Look at the stuff that pops up there. If videos pop up, watch the videos. If a thread pops up, that's even better, right? Go read the thread. And the reason why is because if you really identify with the person that's talking about why they didn't continue trucking, like if when you're reading it, you're thinking in your mind like, oh, I wouldn't have did that either, or no, they wouldn't have been able to do this, then trucking might not be for you altogether. Mm-hmm. However, if you look at these different threads and you stand apart from it and you're looking at it like, that sounds like a personal problem. I'm glad to know that that's there. So when I come to it, I know how to maneuver around it a little bit. Then trucking might be for you. If the thought process is, that sounds kind of like a personal problem, right? Then trucking might be for you. If you're looking at these threads in terms of how to figure out solutions to the problems that they have with trucking, I'm just speaking to the mindset. This is the assessment part of it. Then trucking might be for you if you're thinking of the solutions to what these problems are. If you identify with them,
That's good. That's really good. Because I was thinking the same thing. It's like, well, maybe it's a problem for them, but you might be like, oh, I love this.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Because I know that they're, with this line of work, you are in control, but you might be hired to do a really long trip. I mean, you might take on a load that's far away.
And, like in my dynamic, this is different for other people depending on how they run it. But I book my own loads. So if I book to, let's say somewhere Columbus, right? I'll get to Columbus, and depending on what the situation is, if I got time to book another load out of there, then I'll do it. But if I don't, then I'm gonna pack it in for the night, right? And if I pack it in for the night, then I'm pretty much gonna, get used to Columbus, right? Like, especially in the straight truck that I'm in now, because I'm a little more nimble. I can move around. I need 2 parking spots. I can park at a mall. I can go to the gym. I can go eat. I can take a second to kind of absorb the city before I leave. I think it's very, very important to say in this, when I'm pulling up to the city, whatever city it is, and I'm looking to absorb the culture, as I said, right? That does not involve me drinking or smoking at all. I'm not doing that kind of partying at all. That stuff gets you. You'll lose your authority. You'll lose your CDL. You'll lose so much, man. So don't drink while you're out there. Like, don't smoke while you're out there. It's just not worth it.
It's not.
If you did everything correctly and you just had the money to just get it rolling, I would suggest, if you're buying a used truck, that you take the appropriate amount of time to like really kind of make sure it's the right one. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would you ever
But
recommend leasing a vehicle, or do you recommend buying?
yeah, absolutely. Like if it makes only, I recommend whatever makes sense. Like whatever makes sense to what you're actually doing. I think the most important part of anything is understanding what it actually costs you, right? There's so if you can fix this number for this lease into the cost, and then you can look at these loads and say, hey, I'm going to make this, and you can leave yourself a little wiggle room with that, then go ahead, lease. Absolutely. When you're looking at the trucking alone, you want to look for it to be profitable itself, right? And if it's profitable itself, then you have to look at it in terms of how much profit, and then take that number and see if that's acceptable for you. But most people have a general idea of what's acceptable in that space, because you worked the job before. You got the trucking, and you know what that check used to look like. And if it was enough, you know what your bar is when it comes to your personal life. And so now you're basically trying to see if in this trucking, are you at least meeting that bar or exceeding that bar?
Yeah. And just remembering too that you can scale. I mean, at some point, I envision that you're probably going to add another truck and another truck and a driver and another truck, and really, you know, do that.
I'm looking at a semi truck right now, actually.
Okay, and with that, you would get a driver, or how would you function with that?
So initially, I'll get in the semi myself, and then I have to build up for an employee. It's just it's the safe way to do it. Like, I want to build up a space for them financially. Like, so before I hire somebody, I want to have their yearly salary set to the side.
Okay.
Because I'm a independent business, like, and I want to make sure that the person that I hire, or the people that I hire, that they're taken care of 100%. Like, I never want them to wait on their money.
At all. That's a good way. That's so fair to them. You know, because you think about somebody that's coming on board with you and they're expecting this salary for the next 12 months. They don't be like, oh, you ran out of money. What?
No. I don't want to. I don't want them to have to ever wait for it. If I say Friday, then boom, Friday. If I say Friday, you expect it Thursday.
Right? Like, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Well, thank you, Nick. Is there anything else that you want to share with anyone who's been where you are and they're coming into, like, trying to figure out what they want to do next? Because, like I said, this is what we do here. We try to introduce options for entrepreneurship, and trucking is a great opportunity. I would love to be able to present this to them. What would you say? Like, where would they start?
Research, making sure that your research fits what it actually is. Like, doing really targeted research. Like, a lot of times, I don't want to get too drawn, but a lot of times people ask me and they'll jump right to the finance part of it, and that's just that's like the back end of it. Like, anybody with 2 eyes and 2 ears can see and hear that it's a bag attached to trucking. So trying to understand the money part of it isn't the priority, if you will.
No, I totally agree with that. You don't want to start something and invest a lot of time and money into it. And then you find out it's not for you. So one thing that Nick and I are putting together is a truck company webinar, where a lot of the things that you would want to ask yourself will be presented in this seminar to help you understand if you're a good fit or not. So be looking out for that to come. We'll start promoting that really soon. And then we're also working on a trucking company eCourse. So if you know that it's something for you after you've taken, been through the webinar, and if you want to move in advance on to getting the eCourse, you can get even more in-depth information. So be looking out for that. But Nick, I appreciate all of your time and all of your commitment.
Yes,
It's been a
yes, yes.
pleasure talking to you. Thank you for
No,
sharing your
the pleasure is
story.
on mine. I promise. I thank you so much.
Yep. So thank you everybody just for being with us. And we will have some links below about the webinar, about buying the eCourse if you're interested, a way to reach out to Nick and his company, the Freight Company. If you're
Yep.
interested in learning more about what he's doing, just check out the description below. So again, please like and share, comment, subscribe to our channel, because we'll have more opportunities like this for you to learn about different companies and different options for you as an entrepreneur. So thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, Nick. It was great. And I'll be talking to you soon.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.